Welcome to your quantum journey, where we have a phenomenal show for you today. I am so excited. We have Missy DeBlase with us, owner of the Healing and Gift Emporium. But not only does she have a business tied to spirituality here locally, she also has a degree in nuclear physics with an emphasis in health physics from Idaho State University. I had to have her pause for a moment when she was sharing this with me, and you don't meet a nuclear physicist every day. So I'm very excited to hear how all this kind of tied in for her. Missy is also certified in sound wave healing, is a master trans channeler, psychic medium, light language specialist, and master teacher of Reiki. Welcome, Missy. I cannot wait to hear, how did your quantum journey begin?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me on here. I'm super excited.
Yes.
Um, so my quantum journey, as a little girl, I would see and hear things, and I didn't understand what it was. And it's really scary when you're young and you're seeing people and you're hearing things. And when I would go to my mom and I would try to talk about it, it was very taboo. Um, I was raised very, very strict Catholic. And so these type of things that I was bringing up and talking about is very taboo. And my mom was like, Missy, stop. This isn't what's happening. You're not saying things. You're not
Yeah.
hearing things. And so I started getting migraines. And so I really started spending a lot of time just trying to close all of it out, right? I was like, I can't see things. I don't need to be seeing things. I don't want to communicate. I don't want to talk. So I spent years and years and years trying to keep that closed.
Now, how
Well,
old were you? Give us a frame of reference on what age this happened to you.
so this started around 7 years old. 8 years old, 9 years old, I started figuring out that I was seeing people that weren't here.
Okay.
And
And
so,
was it people
so
that you
that
knew? Did you see people that you knew were obviously deceased? Was it related loved ones, or did you just recognize and have a knowing that they were no longer a part of the physical world?
I had an experience at the grocery store. I had kept seeing this man and I didn't know who he was. And we were walking. He was standing in the parking lot, and when a car went by, he disappeared. And that's when it occurred to me that maybe there wasn't really someone standing there.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
so
goodness.
I started having migraines at this time, and this is when I focused on turning everything off. When I was about 16, um, I was out with some friends. We had been out on the four-wheeler and we were out at night at this campfire. And I said, "Oh my gosh, look at the aura." They said, "The aura." And I said, "Look at the aura of the earth." Um, and this is when everything started flooding back open. After going through puberty, everything started flooding back open, and I started seeing the aura and angels, and all of this stuff started coming in again. So,
Had to be a little bit unusual to explain to the friends group, right?
yes, when I when I had said that, they said, "We've never heard that word before," and I said, "I just don't know." And and again, because no one else had seen it and no one else had heard it, again, it was, Missy,
The
that's not
weird.
right. That's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Missy, you're crazy. That's, stop doing that. So again, I went through this whole other dark period where I was just desperately trying, to ask answers, but I was just continuously turned away. And I was
Mhm.
told that, that this was not of God's work. So,
So, how did you deal with that? Because I know personally, when things start coming online and spirit says it's time, it's hard to shut that down. And oftentimes, when you do, it can manifest illness or disease or cause different disruptions in your life. So, having experienced it twice already at a young age, did you start to see some of those things happening because you were trying to suppress these things?
I was having trouble sleeping. I was having trouble um, because I was constantly getting flooded with thoughts and talking and hearing the voices, hearing them talk to me, and for me trying to focus on everything that I was doing. I did start getting physically sick. My blood pressure started getting really high. I started acting out. You know, I would build up all of this emotion and I didn't know how to get rid of it. And I
Mhm.
would act out. And it was a very, very, very troubling time from my teens into my mid-20s.
Now,
It wasn't
sometimes, I was going to say, sometimes even alcohol or drug abuse comes in. I hear a lot of people say that they were looking for some way to make it stop, to kind of shut it off. So, for anybody that might see those same patterns, sometimes there's another explanation as to what's going on. So, I appreciate you sharing that.
and it was my mind, it was like I never slept. I would have insomnia, and I did turn to drinking for a long
Mhm.
time just to quiet my mind. I just wanted to turn it off. Every time I turned around, I didn't have any avenue or anyone to talk to about this. It was taboo. You're not supposed to be doing this. And so I did turn to drinking, and it was a very rough, rough time in my life. It was very miserable and lonely.
So how did you make the jump? Was maybe pursuing an education in very traditional science-based education a way for you to continue with life, but to kind of shut that side of your brain off? Is that how it progressed? How did you actually get into nuclear physics studies?
It was a way for me to be able to use my mind in a path that I could prove on paper.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Yeah.
this was
Mhm.
something I could validate. I could validate math. I could validate the physics. I could,
Mhm.
um, validate the different classes, and I could focus my mind, hyper focus my mind into putting it into something else. And then studying astrophysics. Well, again, here things start opening back up. I
Yes.
see how the planetary systems work, and I was getting information on black holes, and I'm getting information on how light bends around corners. And they're like, Missy, how did you know those answers? How can you get this information? But at least I could validate it, right, with paper and with
Right.
with other books and things like that. So
Mhm. So what's funny is when you say get information, I know you mean you get a download. So for people that are starting to have their curiosity piqued, let's explain a little bit about the ether that surrounds us and how we get information, because I think people have it happen all the time and they don't even know where it comes from. So can you share a little bit about that?
okay, so um I always have it's my voice in my head. So whenever I'm doing something and you're casually driving, I'll start holding a conversation, right? And people are like, yes, well, I talk to myself all the time. Well, this other self that you're talking to gives us information. Oh, don't go this way. Maybe you should go the other way home. And next thing you know, you found out there was a wreck over there,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
These spirit guides, as I've started exploring, when I first started exploring spirituality and getting through there, I realized, oh, look, we do have angels and we have guides that are here that are helping to guide us on our path here.
Yes.
And so when we ask for information or connect with our different guides, we're able to download information.
So
They're
you're
able to
over
give us.
here, you're in this mode where you're like, okay, everything's on paper, I can prove all these things, and then here comes spirit again to visit you. What was that transition like? You're like, okay, I'm back to things that I can't explain, and there's no plausible explanation for how this is coming to me. What was your life like at that point?
So the close friends and family that I had around me, I had to keep it a secret. Okay. Right. So, anytime I try to hold a conversation with my mom, it was always, Missy, you're crazy. You're probably bipolar. You're bipolar. That's your problem. You have insomnia. You need to get on medication. So you have to start seeking information elsewhere and outside of the normal box of your
Yes.
friends. You know, uh, because they don't understand.
Yeah.
and it's been taught that it was so taboo. And so I started reaching out and getting on the internet, and then with, Facebook and finding these different groups and reaching out, I met my mentor, Rachel Chamness, with Sound Waves Heal.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, some validation that maybe I'm not crazy.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I
I
could still
totally
be
get that.
crazy, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Why do you think you're on the show? I'm proving to myself every day with all these guests, okay, you're not crazy after all, because I think, several of my friends and family thought I was a little bit loony over the last years, but, each of
yeah,
you are helping me to validate what I found for myself. So
yeah.
you found this person and you began to study in sound healing. Was that kind of a logical next step for you? Because it's science based, right? Those are starting to come together, science and the evidence of light based healing, sound based healing. So it wasn't too far of a jump, still in your comfort zone, right? Is that how you kind of progressed?
Still, and so she has her group with the Sound Waves Heal, and being with physics, right? Light, everything light, sound, it's all a wave. These are all things that I've studied. These are all things that we know. Um, she called it liquid Reiki.
Oh, I love
So
that.
the
Yeah.
singing with this, where it brought in the light language and using Reiki with sound to be able to send it. And I had watched a couple of her videos and I literally started crying. I could feel the change inside of my body. And I said, okay, I need to learn, I need to understand this because I want to be able to open up and to be able to do this all of the time. And
I have to just have you pause there for a minute because most times when somebody is first introduced to light language, it's like, what did I just hear? It reminds you if you've ever been in church and people are speaking tongues, you don't, sounds very confusing. So I am very surprised that you were introduced to light language early on and it didn't scare you away.
no, the when she was the singing and the Reiki, and I just literally, it was like my brain started singing and my guide started singing, and it was like, oh, this is it. I have got to understand what this is. I have got to do this.
Wow.
Every cell in my body was vibrating, all my hair was standing up, and I thought, okay, there is something to this, and I need to figure out what this is.
That is amazing. I know we have had a guest that shared some light language, and she said, do you think that the audience is ready for it? And I said, now in this time that we're in right now, we better get ready for it. So it took me a little while for mine to come on. So, what was the process for you? You kind of started dabbling in the sound healing, and where did your journey take you next?
So from there, I took Reiki. I took my first Reiki class. One of the things is when I see people, I can see their auras, right? So these were one of the challenges that I had growing up was I saw energy. I saw the energy centers, and
Yes.
I didn't understand what it was. And so she had introduced us to Reiki, and I started my first Reiki class. I started with Reiki 1, understanding because I understood energy and energy around the body. And one thing people forget is, when our heart stops, we use electricity to start it.
Yeah.
So we have an electric field around our body, and understanding the energy centers and how that works and Reiki, this is what we started. And once I started taking Reiki, everything really started coming online.
So, right now, even with us virtually, and I'm sure you do this with your clients, you can see what my aura is.
Yes.
And this could just out me. I might have a black aura. I hope not. But what color is my aura?
No, so the way that an aura is right now with your aura, so around your shoulders, around this area, we have got green and it goes yellow up here around your head. So this is very open and light. Green, so this is the heart space, and the heart
Mhm.
chakra is green. And this is very green and blue as it goes down. It's showing, for me, it shows confidence, especially with the yellow, and up above being open, receptive, non-judgmental. The green and the blue around your body is calm, confident. And you're also in a state of interest of like
Oh, yeah.
learning. Yeah.
Yes,
So for
absolutely.
this part around your body, that's what I see.
I love that. And for people that are interested in having this done, we're going to get into all that as we move a little bit further down. So you've started to really piece all this together. You're bridging your science and your spirituality after Reiki. What was your next step? Because when I read your intro, you're now a master of many things. So Reiki, the gateway, what came after that?
So after Reiki, I started taking channeling classes.
That's a
So
big
I
jump too.
It is,
Yeah.
right? Well, I thought, okay, if I'm already hearing them and I let's open this up. And through these classes and through Reiki, we start expanding our clairs. We start
Yes.
opening up our chakras, opening our clairs, and started taking a channeling class. It was like, okay, let's learn how to channel our guides. Let's meet our guides. So lots of progressive steps here. So we're doing meditations, we're meeting our guides, and then we're going to learn how to channel them, allow them to step in and communicate. So there was a lot of steps in between about learning how to create a sacred space, how to clear yourself. Um, at this point, everything was coming online really fast because I had been seeing a lot of this.
Yeah.
Um, and so learning how to clear a house, learning how to make sure that the energy is clear, working with crystals. So I all as a progressive. So going through all of these classes, this is over a period of 4 or 5 years
Mhm.
where we start taking these classes and building on it and how does it work. And when you take one class learning how to channel, another modality opens up.
Yes.
And the biggest take that I got out of all of that is you can learn all of these modalities but yours is always going to be unique to you. It's kind of like a pinch of this, a little bit of this, a little
Yes.
bit of this, everybody's own unique modality is going to be different. It all just depends on your spirit and your purpose.
I found that to be so true. I would be in the middle of doing a hypnosis regression, and all of a sudden, my integrated energy therapy would come into play, or vice versa, or a deceased loved one would come through while I was doing energy therapy on someone. I was like, "Well, your aunt is here now. Is it okay for them to place hands on you?" So it is a beautiful way that all these different modalities come in and begin to work through us in service to others. But you mentioned channeling. And so there's a little bit of, again, that word taboo comes in. People are afraid of it because they don't understand. But Missy, can you help people to understand how we channel every day and just common things that we do?
One of the things like we were talking about, when you're driving in your car and you get information and it says, don't go this way, go this way. Well, how about your moms? How many of you did your mom know where you were at when you
Yeah,
weren't
right.
supposed to be there? Right? So, how do you think she got that information? That
Mhm.
information was channeled to her. And if you're a mother or a friend, when you get that feeling in your stomach, intuition is in the gut. That is the
The
solar
gut
plexus
instinct.
where
Yeah.
we receive information. And
Mhm.
when you get that gut instinct, you know where to go, you know the fastest way to get there. If you are going or you're shopping or you need something, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need this, I need this. That's all channeling. That's all information that is being downloaded to us, right?
Yes, absolutely. And oftentimes, as we learn more about discernment, because I think a lot of our intuition's coming online and we're being called to be more discerning, especially in the things that we watch on television, the things that we participate in, the types of conversations that we engage in, the amount of judgment that we might have. Can you help people to understand how discernment and intuition kind of flow together and how they can begin to feel for that inside of themselves?
One of the easiest ways to kind of show that is when we're using our discernment, we need to feel that. So if something gets downloaded and we get some information and we're unsure about it, if we sit quiet and just sit with that, it's our first instinct of what our heart tells us what to do on whether this is truth information or false information. There is so much information that is continuously coming in. If I start getting anxiety, if I start getting nervous, then it's time for me to say, okay, I don't believe that this information coming through is correct, and I need to turn it off and stop listening to that. I need to take the time to sit with myself and really think about what information is coming forward. And we can start to feel that.
Absolutely. I find that sometimes, even when you're listening, as it's coming in, you can almost feel right there in your gut area that doesn't hit me right. Or perhaps even I've said something to someone, and immediately it's almost an auto correction of, hey, you're out of alignment with where you should be in this divine path that you're wanting to follow. Many people are seeking to kind of walk in the ways that Jesus taught us to walk. And so sometimes I'll rely on that gut instinct. I said something that didn't feel kind, and I'll feel it here first. Are you seeing more people start to really tune into what their body is telling them and then associate that with their actions and thoughts and beliefs?
Yes, and you'll find sometimes when you go to speak or you go to say something, a couple words will come out and you'll catch yourself.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, that's not exactly what it is that I need to say, right? Okay,
So, yeah,
let me
let me
change
think
that
that.
for a
Yeah,
second.
let me go back and rethink it. Thank you for reminding me of that, right? So, what is causing all of this to happen? That's the $1 million question. I didn't prep you for it. We've talked a little bit, we've dabbled in ascension conversation. We talked a little bit about the frequency rising from your perspective, Missy. What is causing people to really have these gifts suddenly emerge and these new abilities come online?
So, with the study where there has been a lot coming up about, on the Gaia channel, on the History channel, where we're talking about Egypt and Atlantis and where is it? And we're talking about these different phenomenons when people talk about the Bermuda Triangle. When we're talking about up in Norway and Sweden, where we have these energetic fields that cause crashes or cause planes to go down over the Bermuda Triangle or ships that are going down, these energy portals that are on the earth. And at one time, with ancient Lemuria and Atlantis and the Egyptians, they're starting to see that these pyramids and these buildings and the things that they had done were at a very high energy frequency. They're able to even start picking up the frequency and feeling what that was. So at one time, they're also finding that maybe there were other beings that were here with a higher information, higher level beings. Well, the amount of information and technology that they had back then, that was at a very higher dimensional frequency. And in 2012, ascension has started to begin. This is where these energy portals have reopened. They're starting to see them, they're starting to find them, and our light bodies have been activated. And so people ask, like, what is this light body? Well, this is our soul. Our soul, right? When we're taught from the Bible, comes from heaven. That's an energetic space. We're an energetic being. And what we're doing is our intuition is starting to growing into a higher dimensional space. And this is where we can start using telepathy and manifestation.
Yes. So you mentioned just a little bit about the beings that were here previously, and we're starting to discover, of course, it's been known for some time, but it's coming mainstream, that our ancestors weren't all running around like we see them in the Flintstones, right? There were
Right.
advanced civilizations that inhabited Earth. These cycles are much older, the cycle of birth and destruction, much older. We're not the only beings in the cosmos. I often like to razz people on social media. I know it's still one of my things I'm working on, but when they're like, "Do you think aliens are going to come around?" I'm like, "We are the aliens." And it just blows people's minds. Like, "What are you talking about?" Because we think we're human. And so you kind of touched on it, but you've got the background to discuss it intelligently. What's your thought on who are these galactic beings and have they been here all along and what role do we play in that?
So I think There, when in Ascension in 2012, our light bodies were activated. And when they were activated, they activated where we came from. I
Yes.
believe there are many, many of us souls that were born into these human bodies that have come from the galaxy.
Yes.
We are galactical star seeds,
Yes.
and each of us has come here with a purpose, with the intention to help raise the vibration, reconnect the gap in the ley lines so that the earth can evolve back into an 11 or 12 dimensional space like it was back in the Atlantean and Lemurian times.
So you said a couple of things. 2012, that was the end of the Mayan calendar. So people will resonate with that. It was going to be the end of the world. And then we figured out, nope, it's just the activation of the light body. Then we come into the ley lines. I do a lot of grid work as I'm traveling. So help people to understand the ley lines and the vortexes and how many humans are here, star seeds in human form, working with these ley lines to activate along with what they're realizing the pyramids are and some of these other structures around the world. Is kind of creating this global network of energy reactivation.
So if you think of a crystal or like a diamond and the facets that we cut on those,
Mm-hmm.
that is the same thing as the ley lines and the energy grids. So the way that all of that works is it's in a grid form, and that's where we see sacred geometry,
Yes.
right? I think a bunch of images and things are coming out now about sacred geometry and what you can do with that. And how do we show sacred geometry? We do it with sound, right? Putting water on a speaker, and depending on what frequency you put that on, you create the sacred geometry. So
Yes.
this energy and these ley lines, this is the same thing. All of the light bodies that have been activated and the starseeds that are here to reactivate these ley lines and these portals to raise the frequency back up to where it was before. So, um,
We become like a conduit, right? We become a
yes,
conduit. Yeah. Bringing
yes.
in the energy.
So So what happens is after we start reconnecting these ley lines and these grids, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to start seeing these pillars of energy that go up that reconnect, just like big antennas.
Yes.
And they
Absolutely.
talk about the 144, the
Yes.
144,000 that are here to help with creating this higher dimensional grid and realigning it back on Earth, because the Earth, it has been shown that the Earth was at that space at one time,
Yes.
and it was overrun by other races that destroyed those ley lines so that that connection couldn't be there. And that's where we instilled the fear and anger and war,
Mm-hmm.
these low vibrational frequencies and energies. And that's where we're at. So,
And for me, I've come to feel like 144 is more of a frequency. At least it was for me. It was an attunement to a frequency. And I think we've tended to say, oh, these are these special people and nobody really knows who they are. But for me, it was a frequency that you can attain through calibrations, with the ley lines and different types of calibrations you can do, activations you can do on an individual basis. Do you feel that people are, because I see this, I'm curious to know through your practice, do you see people that feel this calling? They feel this calling, this mission, this purpose, and they don't know what it is. They just know they're being called to do something. Are you seeing more clients come in like that?
I am seeing more and more clients rapidly, and these people and that are coming in, and they're coming in line right now. One of the things that I go to explain is, when they talk about the 144,000, that does not mean that not every single person here has a purpose, has something that they need to do. By your light body being activated, by being in line with that, attuning to these different frequencies, these other healing frequencies, you are attuning and healing the people around you. This
Yes.
is a collective movement. And by you working on your personal self, attuning and getting yourself up there, you are helping to attune and raise the vibration of all the people around you. So it's not just the 144, it's every single person is important. Every
And I
single
think
person is being called to this.
absolutely, it's the ripple effect, right? In so many different ascended masters and people that we consider to be religious gurus. have said something similar. Either it's like a butterfly effect, where the flapping of butterflies' wings can be felt through like a tidal wave on the other side of the world, or the ripple effect, where, be the change you want to see in the world. I think that what you're saying is just focus on yourself and living the best possible life that you can be through the best version of yourself. And that will create the ripple waves, right?
Yes, and that by doing that and the grounding into Gaia can be felt on the other side. You're connecting to the collective. And by opening up your clairs, opening up your chakras, you're connecting. It's in the air, it's in water, it's in the water in the air, it's in the earth, it's all around us in the ether. Once you start working on yourself and working through these ascension energies and getting attuned, all of it just starts falling into place.
You and I have similar stories about fear around some of these things starting to happen, and the fear that we were doing something wrong. And I loved what you shared with me before we actually started about you're in a church setting, or you're in a situation where you're being told that these things aren't good, but that really wasn't your feeling when these gifts started coming online. Can you help our listeners to maybe identify with some of the things that you went through, some of the questions that you had? I know we talked about it. Do I only have to get my information from somebody that's standing in front of this, the pulpit? Or, it's a deep question, but I think we need to open up the conversation.
One of my biggest questions, especially when I was young, is here I am being told, we read the Bible and they go on the mountain and they get information. And you have all of these books about saints that are receiving information. And I'm sitting here as a little girl getting the same information, getting information before it happens. And then I'm being told that can't possibly be, that's taboo. And so it was completely conflicting. And I thought, well, how can that be? Are you saying that because maybe I'm not a male and I'm not up on a mountain receiving the information, that what I'm getting is not true? That I too can't, they preach about the prophets. And I'm like, not that I'm trying to say I'm a prophet, but I wasn't understanding why is it taboo if I'm getting that information
Right,
when I'm being preached to every day that everybody's getting this information,
right.
so writing down in journals, and then it just makes you second guess yourself about everything that you're doing. They preach faith, have faith. It's like, I do have faith and I'm getting this information, but now you're telling me everything is false, and where am I supposed to go with this type of information?
Yeah,
There wasn't anyone to talk to about it, and it just is hard. And
it is.
I I just want people to understand, you know what, there's communities growing. That's why we're here. We want to help, and
And it's not either
it's
or. I love that you said
no.
it's not either or, which has been my experience. I still love a church family. I still love all of the people that are so devoted to carrying out and being passionately led to guide others. I just have found that for me personally, there's space for all of it to coexist. And you've even proven that there's room for science and religion and spirituality to coexist, and they don't have to conflict with one another.
No. And if you read, um, if you really read and listen, I love going to mass. I love going to mass
Yeah.
because whenever they're reading from the Bible, that living book, as they say, I always get a message while I'm there.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
I always get a message while I'm there. And that message, it coincides with all aspects of my life. It isn't about being at the Catholic Church or anywhere that I'm at. It's bringing me information to help me get closer to my higher self, to my higher being, to the collective, to helping others, to being in a state of unconditional love. And that's what I really love about all of it.
I thank you so much for sharing that, because I think so many people are starting to feel like maybe they don't fit into some of the boxes that they've been put in. And I think giving them permission to say it's okay to explore and to not feel like I'm betraying anything that's been sacred to me. And then to be able to go out and open up to other things that are so beautiful and wonderful. I often refer to it as magic. I like to say every day I wake up and I'm like, okay, God, what magic are you going to show me today? Because now that I've been brave enough to ask the question, what's possible that I haven't considered before? And to be led to see it. It's such a beautiful thing. And so I know that as these gifts have come online for you, Missy, it's also led you to serve as a medium for others. So I want to help people to understand what are some of the things that you do to help individuals, because all of this is about service, right? Everybody that I talk to and interview, it's all about service to others. So through your mediumship, how are you able to help individuals?
I have helped many people cross over. I have been there with people when their team shows up to when it's time for them to pass. And that's a very hard time. But I'm able to help people through help ease people through that process when someone is getting ready to cross over. After they have crossed over, people have come in and I'm able to they're able to ask questions. We're able to answer questions. I'm able to um, see them and let them know, where they're at, how they are, able to close any gaps or close any questions about what happened and what's feeling to make people feel better. We want our loved ones here all the time, right? We
Yes.
never want them to pass, but we have to remember they're the ones going home, and as hard as it is, we need to be celebrating, say, yeah, I'm so jealous you're the one going, I'm staying. But you know,
Yeah.
they're always there, they can always be here with us. I help
And
by so whenever my grandmother's around, what kind of a sign, and I'll say, okay, if you ever see a bluebird, that's going to be your grandmother. Or if you see the prism in your window, just know that your grandmother's there.
oh, that's
And
beautiful.
it's really beautiful.
Don't you think this is at least what I find that since reincarnation was taken out of all of the teachings, and of course, the indigenous knew it, whether you're looking back in mythology or you're looking back in ancient religion, um, reincarnation was just a staple of their belief system. And they had these big celebrations and the sending off of and either the preservation or maybe the burning of the body in some way to prepare it for the next life cycle. Since all that has been removed, do you think that that has really increased the level of grief and separation that people feel because they think once the body is gone, then there is nothing left that remains?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And one of the other beliefs where if your body is damaged in any way, you will not be able to pass on into the other side. And through this mediumship, I have been able to see my own past lives. I have been able to, when I communicate with other spirits that have crossed over, um, you know, see and listen to their stories about them on their other past lives.
Yeah.
So it really makes me feel good when people come in and they feel just so lost and so dark. Like, they don't have any information, right? They don't know, well, I don't know what's going to happen and I'm never going to see them again. And I didn't get to say what I wanted to. And they carry this grief and sadness, and they won't self-forgive themselves. They feel like they had done something wrong. And I think that's the biggest part and why I love what I do so much, is so that I can help people get past that.
I find when people come through with messages, it's always about healing. And typically it is some type of grief or guilt that their loved one is carrying. And they feel like their loved one doesn't know about these things, or they're going to bring a new baby into the world and they wish that dad could have been there to see it. And dad's like, I love the name that you've picked out. Dad already knows. They know everything. They're right here with us. They're just at a different frequency. So in people coming to you, do you see them immediately just go, wow, they're right here, I just can't see them? Do you see that almost immediate relief?
I do see that. And also, I am a conduit of energy. And whenever you communicate with someone on the other side, that's a big part of it. And learning how to adjust your frequency so that you can relate and talk to someone that has passed. And often I will see when they're sitting in my chair and I'm talking about them, they'll be able to smell their cologne or
Yes.
start to feel that, right? I could try to create this space where I try to raise all of the frequencies so that they can have some sense of feeling or understanding that they're there. And once they have that experience, it changes everything.
And full disclosure, before I had you on the show, I booked a reading with you because I have somebody that I lost several years ago that I just love dearly, and he's with me every day. And it was somebody that I used to date, and I just have this like relationship every day because I know he's here. And you picked up on him right away. You described everything. You knew kind of like what role he had in my life. And so I can definitely, with all authenticity, tell you that you are so very gifted, and that's just one of the things that you offer. I know that you also own the healing and gift emporium, and you have some beautiful offerings there. So do you want to share with our audience some of the things that you all have kind of crafted there? And of course, for those of you that live locally, this is in Paducah, but you also have an online store that's coming soon.
Yes. So our show will be coming online in the next month or two. Um, on our website, I offer house clearings. We can do that remote. We can do psychic clearings or cutting cords, Reiki sessions remote. If you're local, you can also book a session. My sister, she's actually teaching a Reiki class tomorrow. We have 3 rooms here that we use um, for Reiki. If you want a Reiki session, we have all natural soaps, all natural bath products, teas, herbal teas, medicinal teas. We have beautiful handmade, hand-picked crystals, jewelry, crystal bowls, all of those things, candles, all of those things here. So
So we're starting to see more and more things like what you just mentioned come to the surface. I know 3 years ago, if I wanted to go to the grocery store and find a gallon of milk that didn't have any additives in it, preservatives, chemicals, you couldn't find it. So even at the grocery store, we're starting to see this level of products coming that are more holistic. Can you help people to understand why this holistic movement is really moving at such a fast pace right now?
we have come halfway through ascension, and I think everyone is starting to see, and it's starting to come out online and in the news, that we're seeing all of the toxins, all of the things that have been burdened on our food and all of our products. We're starting to see that our soap products and our bars of soap, they don't even have soap in them, right? That's not even one of the ingredients that's inside of it. And so I really, really, really think it's important to, we hand pick. My sister makes her own soaps, that everything, trying to keep as many chemicals and the metals and the plastics out of the body as we can. Really taking the time to hand pick and look at the teas that are coming in, where we're getting them, how they're sourced, are they ethically sourced, and these different products, and using natural herbs and natural oils. Naturopathy has always been another taboo. And
Yes.
I think we're starting to see that really come online. And just like with frequency, healing yourself with frequency, healing yourself with sound, with vibration, Rife machines. It's all starting to come to light, and it's just so beautiful.
Let's go down the prophecy trail because you're just leading us right there, right? So, people might not be familiar with what ascension is, but let's go back to some of the prophecy and let's try to help people line up some of those prophecies, whether it's the Hopi prophecy about the Rainbow Warriors or, the Mayan calendar ending in 2012. How can people begin to understand a little bit better what's happening right now so it doesn't feel like chaos, it feels like progress?
So one of the biggest things you can do in talking about that discernment, when You are feeling down and your vibration is down, listening to music, trying to laugh, doing what you can to raise your vibration. As you're moving in this direction, you're going to start seeing a separation between people who just flat out live in this fear base, not understanding position versus those who are working towards unconditional love. Um, Being thoughtful, being forthright, right? Having discernment, being kind, helping others. And that split, that divide is going to continue to get greater and greater. And those that are living in this fear base are slowly, they're just going to fall off. They're no longer going to be in our radar. And one of the things that can help us is to reach out to your local community, spiritual community, but raising our vibration, right? We will match, people match our vibration. So it's really important that we're doing the self-care, taking time on ourselves as we go through this progression. And I think people are starting to see that. They're starting to see the way people act are different.
Do you think, and I didn't ask you this beforehand, so you might want to just, tell me that that was not fair to do this to you later, but the heaven and hell, right? So Dolores Cannon is one of my mentors. She was probably the first person that I really studied 40 years as a hypnotherapist, and all this information started coming through her clients while they were in a state of hypnosis. And she learned all about the universe and the cosmos and reincarnation, and she began to get this theory of the two worlds, the world splitting, that earth itself would rise to a frequency and create a new higher frequency earth, and the other would stay a lower frequency. No judgment about either, but the splitting that you're referring to, people would raise to this new frequency where we lived in harmony and in a higher consciousness and love for one another and treating each other as we'd want to be treated. In this other earth would allow people to continue to live out their goals of attaining more materialism, or exploring some of the lower level things, murdering each other if they want to, some of these lower
Mhm.
level things that are happening right now, war, chaos. And so no right or wrong, it's just a choosing. But do you think this is the analogy of the heaven and hell in the Bible?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think this is the separation where
Yeah.
we have a choice. Um, uh, every single person on earth right now's light body has been activated. And we all are here with a mission. Some people's mission is not to engage with that activation of that light body. They're not going to feed it, they're not going to grow it, they're not going to accept it, and they're not going to push forward with it. So the little flame is just kind of slowly just going to smudge back out and stay at this three-dimensional space. And those who have acknowledged their light body, whether they want to or not, it's going to start growing. The collective is growing. And the more and more as the collective grows and expands, these ley lines continue to get connected, these pillars become activated, and the quantity of energy that's going to be coming down here, they're going to be ascending.
Yeah. And I love what you mentioned. Some people's light is going to remain small. And those might be the people that we might begin to try to form judgment about. This person did this to us. They're the reason that we have poison in our foods. They're the reason that child trafficking, was happening. How important is it to stay out of judgment right now as we focus ourselves into this higher frequency?
It is absolutely critical that we work towards unconditional love and what I like to call 0 point energy. We need to sit in a space and not judge. They have a choice. And just like us, if we were to turn back the clock 40 years ago and look at where we were at, we could have some pretty harsh judgments on ourselves as well. And
Absolutely.
taking the time to step back and look at the entire situation and understanding where they're coming from, we don't have to match their vibration. We don't have to match their frequency. We can
Right.
choose to stay above that. They have accepted to live in that environment, and we have chosen to move above that. So that's critically important because that's not helping their situation or your situation by modifying your vibration. to compete or have judgment with that. So
Entangling with it, right? Just the judgment of it entangles your energy with it. So I see this a lot with politics. People get very triggered, and I used to be one of them. But before you know it, you are right there in that frequency because you've entangled yourself. But I want to touch on one more thing while we're kind of talking about this. So perspective. I know that it really is important to really be looking at objectively what's your perspective. Do you see the world in chaos? Because you become your reality. And this is kind of an advanced course that we're having here, but your reality is a reflection of your perspective. So if you don't want to be a part of that lower frequency, it is a daily task for you, a goal to really keep yourself in as much joy and bliss and positivity as possible. Because if your view of the world is chaos, you will manifest that experience for yourself. Deep topic, but what can you share with our viewers on that?
um and misery loves company.
Yeah. Yeah. We've heard that.
If right, that is a fact. And if this is a perfect example where we can take the time, if you find that you are triggered by something, then this is the time that you know you need to work on something. This is where that self-help and working on ourselves, working towards unconditional love um, is if we have triggers. And that's their goal, that's their job. They need to feed on that low vibration. Low vibration cannot feed itself. It has to have a donor. And they're continuously reaching out, trying to get more donors. And it's up to you
Yep.
to shield and protect yourself and say, no, not today, Satan, I'm not doing that.
I
Right?
was trying to keep Buddy out of the video, but I will tell you that I don't think anything happens by accident. And I think, kind of what's popping in for me is that even if it's as simple as spending some time with your animals, this is a really good way to raise your vibration. Going out in nature, putting your feet on the ground, taking a walk by the lake. If you're having one of those days where kind of the chaos of the world is getting to you, and we're going to notice this, Missy, I really want your opinion. I seemed to notice for a while before I became very intentional about what I was allowing to impact me. There is chaos at an individual level. You find chaos at work, chaos erupting in relationships. And it seems like it's everywhere because it's showing us what we need to clear in our own field. It's almost like a mirror. And so we maybe rely on our animal friends a little bit more in nature to help us get back in balance. Do you see this element of chaos kind of weaving itself not only in the world, but at an individual level as well?
It connects to everything. And just kind of when what we had talked about earlier through the news, through media, through social media, it's super important that we take time away from all electronics, from that man-made electricity and that man-made frequency, because that is not at your highest. That's not a high frequency. Going out, listening to the birds, listening to nature, putting your face in the sun, watching a sunset, um, doing something to make you laugh, listening to music. If you can't get yourself into a better mood, turn on some music and make yourself dance. Within moments, without your control, you're going to start raising your frequency and your vibration, and you're going to be feeling so much better. And animals, 100%, they're here for unconditional love, unconditional companionship. Instantly raise your vibration.
They're such beautiful creatures. And I will tell you that I received a download one time about the way I had somebody that was asking me about why they were seeing birds. And it wouldn't be the same bird, it would be different birds. And they thought, well, if it's my loved ones, I have all these different loved ones. And what came through is that birds serve as activations for us through the ocular lens. Oftentimes, the color of a bird that you're seeing will correlate with an activation that you're needing to have. And so that bird will appear to you at that time to provide an ocular activation, which I'd never heard before. And so I thought, we're all accessing this beautiful information, and being willing to just be open and trust it is such a big part of the process. Can you help people to maybe have a little more confidence in what they need to do when they start feeling like they're ready to explore? I mean, do they just book a session with you? Does that look like a mediumship session? How do they start? How do they get started with you?
So I have mentorship sessions. So what the first step that will happen is we'll meet for an hour and we'll see where you're at. And from there, we will work on upgrades, clairs, chakras, Reiki, what modalities you're interested in, and how we progress from there in activating the light body. Each and every person is going to react or, you know, enjoy one modality versus another one.
Yeah.
So the first thing to do is for us to sit and just have a 1 hour conversation, kind of like we're at right now, to see where you're at and check check in with your I always check in with your spirit guides, my spirit team, your spirit team. We get together, we come up with a plan, and then we just start that mentorship program and we just start pushing forward.
I love that. And again, we're going to have all of your information in the description of this video. Is there anything else that you can think of? And we've been all over the place. We've been not only around the world, but we've been in the cosmos too. Anything that you can think of that's really important for our listeners before we close today?
One of the biggest things for everyone out there is about self-compassion and self-love. It is so critically important that when we talk about not judging other people, that we don't judge ourselves, right? We are all here, we
Yeah.
are all learning, we are all growing, and it is so important to have just as much patience and love for yourselves as you would for your animal, for another family member, for somebody else, and that's the first place to start. Um, to help with the healing and to push forward and to grow forward, is just acceptance and patience and self-love.
That is the hardest thing. Don't you find that people are so critical of themselves? How do you recommend? I mean, sometimes I'll say, well, start to observe your thoughts. What are you thinking about yourself? Do you have other tips that people can maybe use to begin looking at how do they think of themselves and how do they talk about themselves?
One of the biggest things is that next self-negative talk. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, I need to lose weight, say, oh my gosh, I feel so great today. Oh my gosh, I'm so light on my feet. It's really taking every before you speak anything out, rephrase it into something positive. And when we look in the mirror, one of the best things you can do to start, if you don't know Ho'onopono, at least look in the mirror every day and look yourself in the eye and say, I love you. I love you.
It's hard to do.
7 times every day is the greatest first step to start along that healing journey.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Missy. I could talk to you all day about these things. There's so much going on. But I think, getting back to perspective and being positive, I couldn't be more excited with where we are as a collective, where we're going together, the positive things that we're seeing coming forth. Beautiful people like yourself and your sister opening this healing emporium and offering these holistic products and allowing us to have things that don't have chemicals and to access services that really help us to be our best self. So I thank you so much for sharing your quantum journey. I definitely want to have you back again and again. Missy's information will be in the description of the video. Thank you for sharing your quantum journey with us today, Missy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was my absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Until next time.
Okay.